Today we're answering a question that's bugged the Walking Dead fans since 2010. Just how much time actually passes in the first season of The Walking Dead? From the moment Rick gets shot to the CDC explosion, how many days, weeks or months go by? It's one of those questions that seem simple, but when you actually try to answer it, you realize just how confusing it is. A line of dialogue here, a little detail there, and suddenly you're deep in timeline detective work. And if you've been in the Walking Dead community, you'd know how screwed up the timeline in the show is. So much so that we're now trying to justify it with some fancy words to make it sound smart. Dreamlike space.
Really?
But in this video we're gonna try to piece together every clue the show gives us, and try to build the most accurate timeline possible. But before we start counting the days and piecing together a timeline, we need to know what year and month we're even in. Most wikis about The Walking Dead conclude the apocalypse starts in August 2010, but I wanted to try to piece together a complete timeline of every single event with the most accuracy possible. The show never gives us a title card that says 2010 or even anything remotely close to that to help me through this, so I need to dig deeper. And funnily enough, we do get a clue about it, but it wasn't even in this first season. In season 2 episode 3, Save the Last One, there's a yellow homecoming banner hanging in the high school where Shane and Otis go on a run to get medicine for Carl. It reads Homecoming September 8th, 2009. This small detail tells us that normal life was still going strong in late 2009. Kids were in school, sports were happening, so the apocalypse hadn't even started. So that gives us an anchor. Everything that happens to Rick must take place sometime after that date, most likely the following year, 2010. And that fits because you can see the weather in the show is pretty hot. Now Georgia is pretty hot all the time, but judging by the vegetation and how green it is, and just how everything looks, we can definitely say it takes place in late spring or summer. And that also fits because that's when they started filming the show. So that's our first step. We can conclude that season 1 is happening in the second half of 2010. When Rick wakes up in the hospital, there's a calendar pinned to the wall near the nurse's desk. If you freeze the frame and zoom in, you'll see a single month printed in big capital letters below a faded landscape photo. At first glance it's too blurry to read, but the word is short, 3 letters, and begins with a letter that seems like an M. Judging by the width, the spring-like landscape, and the fact that the first letter looks like an M, it matches perfectly with, you guessed it, May. But right away you may be asking a question. If the outbreak officially began in August, why was the calendar still in May when Rick woke up? The simplest explanation is human neglect. Once the outbreak began, patients flooded in, staff died, fled, or were overrun, long before they could flip it. We can even see when Shane comes for Rick, they're already executing people in the hospital. No one will worry about the calendar. Another possibility here is the calendar wasn't an accident at all. It's symbolic, like the time stopped after the fall. May represents the last normal month before civilization fell apart. Everything after that froze in time. We can even see that basically every clock in the show is frozen, and a clock's battery runs out in 6 to 12 months. And actually the only time I remember something with a working clock or a watch was when Deanna told Rick the time and he fixed the time on his watch. And that even makes sense since Alexandria was the first time since the fall where we've seen a place that resembles the world before the outbreak. When Shane visits Rick in the hospital, he leaves a vase of fresh flowers beside his bed. When Rick wakes up, those same flowers are dry and colorless, their petals collapsing in on themselves. Real flowers take about 4 to 6 weeks to completely dry out in room temperature conditions, which means after Shane's visit, Rick's coma lasts another 6 to 8 weeks. To confirm when the apocalypse started, we go to the CDC episode, where Dr. Jenner keeps a log. He says,
It's day 194 since wildfire was declared, and 63 days since the disease abruptly went global.
That's our first numerical anchor. In World Beyond there is a day called Monument Day, which is the day that society collapsed. It's on August 27th, and it's mentioned that wildfire was declared a pandemic on August 25th. If day 1 of wildfire was August 25th, then day 63 would land on October 27th, 2010. So the CDC explosion happens roughly 2 months after the global collapse. Jenner's line also syncs with everything we've seen from Morgan's perspective earlier in the season. When Rick asks him about the world outside, Morgan says,
Gas lines have been down for maybe a month.
If the power grid failed about a month earlier, that again lines up perfectly with wildfire going global in late August. So let's actually count. How many days pass after Rick wakes up? Day 1, Rick wakes in the hospital, he meets Morgan and Dwayne, eats dinner and falls asleep. Day 2, he rides to Atlanta, gets trapped in the tank, meets Glenn, and by nightfall he's reunited with Lori and Carl at the survivor camp. Day 3, rescue mission for Murrow, meet the Vatos, Walker attack that night. Day 4, they bury Amy, burn the bodies, leave Jim and reach the CDC by evening. Day 5, the CDC explodes. So 5 days of story. And if we align that with Jenner's log, Rick's day 1 would be approximately day 59 of the apocalypse, October 23rd, and the CDC explosion, day 64, October 28th. But could Rick survive an 8-week coma without IV fluids? This is one of the questions that so many people have, theorized about. Realistically, no, he wouldn't survive. But there was a small detail I noticed which could be a sign that someone took care of Rick during that time. When Shane enters the room, the get well cards fall down, but when Rick wakes up, they're upright again, so someone might have been there. And of course, as you may know, there is a episode which semi-confirms that someone took care of Rick. Fear the Walking Dead shows society is still functioning, schools open, police active, which means those events are happening before Rick wakes up. By the time Rick wakes up, LA has already been bombed and the outbreak has gone global. War Beyond backs this up with Monument Day every August 27th, so basically the entire franchise agrees that the world ended in late August 2010, and season 1 of The Walking Dead unfolds in October. And season 2 actually begins just 1 day later, and I know that because of this line.
Our group's smaller now. We lost another. Day before last. It was her choice.
Talking about Jackie, who of course died in the CDC explosion alongside Jenner. The group is still near Atlanta and the weather is warm. This is a bit confusing since it's supposed to be October 30th. And as hot as Georgia is, it's not that hot in October. But that's probably just due to the filming schedules. Same thing happens at the end of season 4 where it's freezing cold. Then in the season 5 premiere, which is supposed to take place literally less than 24 hours after the finale, everyone is sweating their brains off. So, the most plausible timeline according to me and the research I did is this. Rick gets shot around early May 2010, let's say May 5th to 10th. Carl was still in school and school typically ends around May 23rd in Georgia. He's taken to the hospital where he's still fully functional. Shane visits him, leaves flowers, and over the next 6 to 8 weeks, those flowers dry out. So this puts this event somewhere in August. So by August, the hospital is starting to fall apart. And August 25th, wildfire is declared. Rick is in a coma during the collapse, Shane sees military executions and seals Rick in. That's around either late August 2010 or early September 2010. And then Rick wakes up October 23rd, day 59. Another thing here is the bombings, which are part of Operation Cobalt. A whole rabbit hole to go down, but it basically was an operation to napalm all the major cities and terminate all the zombies, including the civilians, to stop the spread. Of course, it didn't really work. But that starts September 9, 2010, and the next day camps form near Atlanta, including our group's one. So basically around early September our group made that camp around Atlanta, and by the time Rick woke up, they've been there for almost 2 months. So to summarize this, how long does season 1 really last? From Rick waking up to the CDC explosion, 5 days. From wildfire going global to the CDC explosion, about 2 months. And from Rick getting shot to the CDC explosion, it's approximately 5.7 months. Just under half a year from the first scene in the season to the last. But tell me what you think. Do you agree with this timeline? I tried to make it as close to reality as I can. I'm really happy with finding the exact date when Rick woke up, but I'm a bit disappointed that I couldn't find the exact date Rick got shot. But there's just no evidence to point to when that could be. But anyways, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.